Rome conquered everything it touched: Britain in the north, Egypt in the south, Germany in the west. Carthage, Greece, Spain, all fell before Roman legions. Rome seemed unstoppable, invincible, destined to rule the entire known world. But there was one empire that Rome could never conquer. One civilization that humiliated Roman armies repeatedly and decisively. One power that matched Rome for 5 centuries and never broke. While Rome built the Colosseum, this empire controlled the Silk Road. While Rome conquered Europe, this empire dominated Asia. This is the story of the Parthian Empire, the Persian dynasty that became Rome's greatest nightmare. The empire history forgot but should never have. The Parthians were originally a nomadic Iranian people from the region southeast of the Caspian Sea in what is now northeastern Iran and Turkmenistan. After Alexander the Great's death, his empire fragmented. The Seleucid Greeks tried to control the vast Persian territories but struggled to maintain order in distant provinces. Around 247 BC, a tribal leader named Arsaces led a revolt against Seleucid control and established an independent kingdom. This was the beginning of the Arsacid dynasty, which we call the Parthian Empire. Over the next century, the Parthians expanded aggressively, absorbing former Persian territories. By 141 BC, they had captured Mesopotamia, including Babylon itself. A new Persian power had risen from the ashes of Alexander's conquest. The Parthians built their military around something that would revolutionize ancient warfare: the horse archer. Parthian warriors were trained from childhood to ride at full gallop while simultaneously firing arrows with devastating accuracy. They could fire in any direction, including backwards while retreating, a technique that became known as the Parthian shot. This was not just a military tactic, it was a cultural institution. Parthian nobles competed in archery tournaments. Cavalry skill was the highest social virtue. But the Parthians had a second devastating weapon: the Cataphracts. Heavily armored cavalry with both horse and rider covered in metal armor, carrying long lances, designed to smash through infantry formations like battering rams. Rome's first catastrophic encounter with Parthia came in 53 BC. Marcus Licinius Crassus was one of the wealthiest men in Roman history and a member of the first triumvirate alongside Julius Caesar and Pompey. But wealth and political power weren't enough. Crassus wanted military glory to match his partners. He decided to invade Parthia against the advice of nearly every experienced Roman commander. He led an army of approximately 40,000 Roman soldiers into Mesopotamian desert. He ignored local warnings. He dismissed Parthian military capabilities. He marched his heavy infantry into terrain perfectly suited for cavalry and completely unsuited for Roman legions. It was one of history's most catastrophic military miscalculations. Near the town of Carrhae in modern Turkey, the Parthians sprung their trap. The Roman army formed its defensive square formation, expecting a direct assault. Instead, Parthian horse archers surrounded them completely and began circling, firing arrows continuously. The Romans raised their shields, but the arrows kept coming from every direction. The Parthians had brought camel trains carrying thousands of replacement arrows. They never ran out. When Roman formations broke to charge the archers, the horsemen simply galloped away, firing backwards as they retreated. When Romans held formation, they were slowly massacred by arrows. There was no defense against this tactic. 20,000 Romans died. 10,000 were captured. Crassus was killed. Rome never suffered such a humiliation. The most humiliating aspect of the Battle of Carrhae wasn't the death toll. It was what the Parthians captured: the Roman legionary standards. These golden eagles were sacred symbols of Roman military honor. Losing them was considered a catastrophe of almost spiritual significance. Rome losing its standards to Parthia was one of the greatest shames in Roman history. It haunted Roman consciousness for decades. Julius Caesar planned a massive campaign to recover them. He was assassinated before it could happen. Mark Antony led a campaign to recover them and failed disastrously. It took Augustus Caesar decades of diplomacy before Parthia finally agreed to return the captured standards. Even then, Rome had to negotiate rather than conquer. After Carrhae, Rome tried repeatedly to defeat Parthia. Mark Antony led the largest Roman invasion of Parthia in 36 BC with approximately 100,000 soldiers. He expected a quick, decisive victory. Instead, the Parthians used their classic tactics, avoiding direct confrontation, cutting Roman supply lines, harassing the army constantly with horse archers. Antony's siege equipment was destroyed. His army was constantly attacked while moving. Disease spread through the ranks. Food ran low. After failing to capture any major Parthian city, Antony was forced into a humiliating retreat. He lost approximately 32,000 men during the campaign, more than Crassus had lost at Carrhae. Parthia had humiliated the most powerful Roman commander of his generation. While Rome and Parthia clashed militarily, Parthia was winning an equally important war economically. The Parthians controlled the Silk Road, the ancient trade network connecting China in the east to the Mediterranean world in the west. Every silk garment worn by a Roman senator, every spice flavoring Roman food, every luxury good from the east passed through Parthian territory and paid Parthian taxes. The Parthians deliberately prevented direct trade contact between Rome and China, maintaining their position as the essential middleman. This gave Parthia enormous economic power. Roman gold flowed eastward continuously to pay for luxury imports. Parthia grew wealthy from trade while also maintaining military strength. It was the perfect strategic position. The Parthian capital of Ctesiphon, located near modern-day Baghdad in Iraq, was one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. It sat on the Tigris River, perfectly positioned for both trade and defense. The city grew to house perhaps 500,000 people at its peak, making it one of the largest cities on Earth. Ctesiphon featured magnificent palaces, grand bazaars, sophisticated water systems, and stunning architecture. The famous Tak-Khasra Arch, actually built by the later Sassanid dynasty that replaced the Parthians, still partially stands today and gives us an impression of the architectural grandeur these empires achieved. Ctesiphon represented the wealth and sophistication of Eastern civilization at its peak. For nearly 5 centuries, Rome and Parthia fought each other to a perpetual stalemate. Rome won battles occasionally. Parthia won battles regularly. Neither could deliver a knockout blow to the other. The fundamental problem for Rome was strategic. Parthia's territory was vast and mostly desert. Roman heavy infantry needed supply lines, water, and roads. The Parthian heartland offered none of these. Every time Rome pushed deep into Parthian territory, its supply lines stretched impossibly thin, and Parthian tactics made advance impossible. Every time Parthia pushed into Roman territory, Roman defensive fortifications and infantry discipline stopped them. The two empires were perfectly matched in their incompatibility, like two puzzle pieces that could never fit together. Rome's greatest success against Parthia came under Emperor Trajan in 1115 to 117 AD. Trajan was arguably Rome's greatest military emperor, and he led a massive, well-organized campaign against Parthia. He captured Mesopotamia and even reached Ctesiphon, the Parthian capital. He stood at the Persian Gulf and reportedly wept that he was too old to follow Alexander's path to India. For a brief moment, it seemed Rome might finally conquer Parthia completely. But Trajan's success was illusory. While he advanced east, massive rebellions erupted behind him in newly conquered territories. The Parthians used guerrilla tactics to make occupation impossible. Trajan died during his retreat, and his successor immediately abandoned all the conquered Parthian territories. The Parthian-Roman relationship was more complex than simply war. The two empires also maintained diplomatic relations, traded extensively despite tensions, and influenced each other culturally. Parthian artistic styles influenced Roman decorative arts. Roman architectural techniques influenced Parthian building projects. Both empires maintained ambassadors and diplomatic channels even during periods of conflict. The Parthians adopted Hellenistic Greek cultural elements while maintaining their Iranian identity, creating a unique fusion culture. Parthian coins showed rulers with both Greek and Iranian imagery. Parthian art combined Eastern and Western elements beautifully. This cultural exchange between East and West, mediated through centuries of Parthian-Roman interaction, helped shape the cultural heritage of the entire ancient world. Ironically, the Parthian Empire was not finally destroyed by Rome. It was overthrown from within by a new Persian dynasty. In 224 AD, Ardashir I, a local ruler from the Persian province of Fars, the ancient heartland of Cyrus the Great's empire, rose in rebellion against the weakened Parthian king. After several decisive battles, Ardashir defeated and killed the last Parthian emperor. The Arsacid dynasty, which had ruled for nearly 5 centuries, ended. Ardashir established the Sassanid Empire, which would continue the Persian tradition of confronting Rome and later Byzantium for another 4 centuries. The Parthians were gone, but Persian civilization continued without interruption through a new dynasty. The Parthians are one of history's most underappreciated empires. They held the line between East and West for 5 centuries. They preserved Iranian and Persian cultural traditions through the Hellenistic period following Alexander's conquest. They controlled the Silk Road and facilitated the first connections between Chinese and Mediterranean civilizations. Their military innovations, particularly the Cataphract, influenced cavalry warfare for over 1,000 years. Byzantine and medieval European heavy cavalry evolved directly from Parthian Cataphract traditions. The Parthian shot became a proverbial expression in English, meaning a final cutting remark made while leaving. Even their language echoes in modern English phrases. This forgotten empire shaped far more of our world than most people ever realize. Rome conquered Britain, Egypt, Gaul, Spain, and Greece. Rome built the most powerful military machine in Western history. But Rome never conquered Parthia. For nearly 5 centuries, the Parthian Empire stood as the only power capable of matching Rome as an equal. They humiliated Roman armies at Carrhae. They repelled Antony's massive invasion. They frustrated Trajan's greatest conquests. They controlled the Silk Road. They preserved Persian civilization through centuries of challenge. They proved that Eastern civilization was the equal of Western power in every measurable way. The Parthian Empire deserves to be remembered not as Rome's forgotten enemy, but as one of history's greatest empires. This is Historiopedia, history that feels real.